For 18 years, she said nothing. No interviews. No red carpets. No social media presence. No statement of any kind. While her father dominated global headlines, performing death-defying stunts, starring in billion-dollar franchises, and living one of the most public lives in Hollywood history, his daughter existed in almost total silence. And for a long time, the world assumed that silence meant acceptance. It didn't. Because the moment Suri Cruise turned 18, something shifted. Quietly, at first. Then all at once. And when the full picture came together, the name change, the public appearance, the carefully chosen words finally spoken, it became clear that this wasn't the silence of someone who had nothing to say. This was the silence of someone who had been waiting. So what did Suri say? What did she do the moment the legal ties to her father's world were finally cut? And why are people who know this family, insiders, former church members, people who watch this story unfold up close, saying that what just happened is far bigger than the media is letting on? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, the full picture will make complete sense. And it is not what you expected. To understand what Suri just did, you have to understand what she was born into. April 18, 2006. That date means everything in this story. That was the day Suri Cruise entered the world, not in an ordinary hospital room, with ordinary sounds and ordinary chaos. She was born in silence. Literal, enforced silence. According to the principles of Scientology, championed by the church's founder L. Ron Hubbard, words and sounds during childbirth are believed to leave traumatic imprints on both the mother and the newborn. Tom Cruise, one of Scientology's most devoted and high-profile members, had embraced this belief entirely. Katie Holmes gave birth under those conditions. Think about that for a moment. The very first seconds of Suri's life were shaped not by a spontaneous human reaction, but by a doctrine, a philosophy, a set of institutional rules that her father held above almost everything else. That detail matters, because it was only the beginning. Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes had announced their relationship to the world in 2005 with an energy that was impossible to ignore. Cruise appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and, in one of the most replayed moments in television history, jumped on the studio couch while declaring his love for Holmes. The audience erupted. The cameras couldn't look away. Within months, the couple had announced a pregnancy, a Paris proposal atop the Eiffel Tower, and plans for a lavish Italian wedding. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. From the inside, according to people who were present, it looked considerably more complicated. Katie's family, devout Catholics from Toledo, Ohio, had serious reservations almost immediately. Her father, Marty Holmes, a skilled attorney, began raising quiet concerns well before the wedding invitations were ever sent. The issue wasn't simply Tom's fame or the glare of the public spotlight. The issue was Scientology, what it demanded of its members, what it would demand of Katie, and eventually what it would mean for their grandchild. Despite those concerns, the family showed up. They attended the $3.5 million ceremony held in a historic Italian castle, and Marty Holmes delivered a heartfelt speech at the rehearsal dinner. They set aside their doubts for the people they loved. But setting aside doubts doesn't make them disappear. In the years that followed, people close to Katie began noticing changes. She grew more reserved, more guarded. Journalist Debbie Baer, who had interviewed a young and bright-eyed Katie Holmes for 17 magazine years earlier, later remarked on the stark difference between the girl she remembered and the woman she watched on red carpets, mechanically repeating how amazing Tom was, as if reading from a carefully rehearsed script. Actress Leah Remini, a longtime Scientologist who later became one of its most vocal critics, attended the wedding and described an atmosphere that felt surreal and overpowering, less like a celebration, more like a carefully managed production. Something was building beneath the surface. And in June 2012, it finally broke open. Katie Holmes didn't just file for divorce. She engineered it. This is the part of the story most people glossed over at the time. They saw the headlines and assumed it was another Hollywood breakup. Irreconcilable differences. Two busy careers. The usual story. But the details told a very different picture entirely. Katie had reportedly consulted her father well in advance of any public move. The prenuptial agreement Marty Holmes had negotiated before the marriage ended up filling 5 bankers' boxes with paperwork. That level of documentation doesn't happen by accident. That is preparation. That is someone thinking several steps ahead. The divorce was finalized in just 11 days after she filed. 11 days. For a marriage involving one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Hollywood, that timeline is nothing short of extraordinary. In terms of custody, Katie's priority was clear and completely non-negotiable. She requested sole custody of Suri. Not joint custody, not split time. Sole custody, which meant she, and only she, would have the legal authority to make decisions about her daughter's upbringing, education, and, critically, religious exposure. In a later legal deposition, Tom Cruise was directly asked whether Holmes had left him specifically to protect Suri from Scientology. The question did not land well. Cruise called it offensive and pushed back firmly. But he did concede, on the record, that it was a reason Holmes had cited. That admission echoed for years. Speaking of which, here is what the public largely missed at the time. Child support was set at $400,000 per year, a figure that sounds significant in isolation, but represents a fraction of Cruise's estimated $600 million fortune. Legal observers noted that Holmes appeared to accept a financially modest settlement in exchange for something far more valuable to her: complete and uncontested control over how Suri would be raised. She traded money for freedom, and she got it. After the divorce, Katie and Suri relocated to New York City. And for years, many years, Suri Cruise existed as a kind of ghost figure in the cultural conversation around her famous father. She was occasionally photographed by paparazzi. She was referenced in tabloid headlines. But she never spoke. She never posted. She gave the world absolutely nothing to work with. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise continued his reign as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. Mission Impossible sequels broke box office records. He performed increasingly jaw-dropping stunts, hanging off aircraft, riding motorcycles off cliffs, holding his breath underwater for minutes on end. The public marveled. The franchise grew. And Suri grew up, quietly, away from all of it. People who know the family describe Katie and Suri's bond during those years as extraordinarily close. Not in a performative, social media-friendly way. Genuinely, privately close. They were spotted constantly together on the streets of New York, grabbing coffee, walking their cat, attending Broadway shows. No handlers, no security detail. Just a mother and her daughter, building a real life together entirely on their own terms. Katie involved Suri in her creative work too. Suri's voice appeared in Alone Together in 2022 and again in Rare Objects in 2023, quietly, without fanfare, without a press release. Just a mother who wanted her daughter present. Katie later told Glamour magazine that having Suri involved in her films felt completely natural. "She's my heart," Katie said simply. But through all of this, through the school runs and the film projects and the Broadway shows and the quiet New York life, one figure remained consistently, conspicuously absent: Tom Cruise. Reports from multiple outlets suggested that Cruise and Suri had not been seen together publicly since 2012. 1 year became 3. 3 became 7. 7 became a full decade. And still, no confirmed sighting. No public acknowledgement from either side. Did you know that former Scientology members, who have since left the church, have spoken at length about a policy known internally as disconnection, a practice in which members are encouraged, and sometimes formally instructed, to sever ties with individuals considered to be suppressive to the church's mission? Critics of Scientology have long argued that this policy has quietly torn families apart for decades. Whether disconnection played a formal role in Cruise's relationship with Suri has never been publicly confirmed. But the timeline and the totality of the silence has fueled years of intense and deeply uncomfortable speculation. And then Suri turned 18, and everything changed. June of last year, high school graduation day. Suri Cruise celebrated one of life's defining milestones in New York City, surrounded by people who love her. Friends were there. Family was there. Katie Holmes was there, beaming with pride. Tom Cruise was not. That same evening, he was photographed at a Taylor Swift concert in London, laughing in the VIP section alongside Hugh Grant, Ashton Kutcher, and Mila Kunis. The optics were, to put it gently, extremely difficult. The internet noticed immediately. The contrast, absent from his daughter's graduation, present at a high-profile celebrity event on another continent, became the dominant story across entertainment media for days. Cruise's representatives did not issue any statement addressing his absence. But what happened after the graduation is where this story takes a turn that almost no one saw coming. Shortly after turning 18, Suri made a decision that was quiet, deliberate, and, once people understood its full meaning, deeply powerful. She dropped the name Cruise. She began going by Suri Noel. Noel being Katie Holmes's own middle name. Not a stage name. Not a passing experiment. A personal and legal re-identification. A choice made freely by an adult, with complete understanding of what it communicated. Sources close to the family told Page 6 that Suri wanted her own identity, one she could define entirely herself, connected to the parent who had been there, the parent who had shown up, the parent who had carried boxes into her college dormitory, said a tearful goodbye on move-in day, and cheered proudly from New York while her daughter began a new chapter in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon University, one of the most respected performing arts institutions in the country. The name change was not loud. It was not an act of aggression or a declaration of war. It was something quieter and, in many ways, far more devastating. It was a simple, clear statement of where she belongs. And for the first time in 18 years, Suri Cruise had spoken, not in words given to a journalist or a camera, but in a choice that said everything a lengthy interview never could. So let's connect the dots, because they form a picture that is both deeply heartbreaking and, in its own quiet way, extraordinary. Tom Cruise is one of the most accomplished and dedicated actors of his generation. That is genuinely not in dispute. His commitment to his craft, his physical courage, his decades of discipline are remarkable by any standard. But between his career and his faith, there has always been a third force pulling at his attention. And by most accounts, it was that force that ultimately cost him his daughter. Katie Holmes understood that earlier, perhaps, than she has ever publicly admitted. The silent birth was a warning she absorbed quietly. The monitoring, the isolation, the gradual erosion of her own identity. She absorbed those too. And then, on one precise and carefully calculated morning in June 2012, she stopped absorbing and started acting. She gave Suri something that no amount of child support could ever purchase. She gave her a childhood without doctrine, an adolescence without surveillance, a name, her name, that Suri could carry proudly and freely into adulthood. And Suri, for her part, has honored that gift in the most meaningful way imaginable, not with anger, not with public accusations, but with a life that is visibly, demonstrably, completely her own. The silence is broken now, not loudly, but completely, because here is the truth at the very center of this story, the paradox that has always lived quietly beneath every headline and every tabloid rumor and every legal filing. Suri Cruise was never truly silent. She was simply being protected by a mother who fought with everything she had, until the day her daughter was old enough to speak entirely for herself. That day has arrived, and everything Suri has said, through her name, her music, her university, her presence at her mother's side on a cold New York night, adds up to something her father has never publicly acknowledged, and may never fully reckon with. She is her mother's daughter, fully, freely, finally. What do you think? Is there any path back for Tom Cruise and Suri? Or has too much time passed for this relationship to ever be repaired? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you at all, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because we have many more of these coming that you absolutely will not want to miss.